The day Karen called the cops on my 6-year-old daughter for drawing with sidewalk chalk was the day I realized our neighborhood had a monster living at the end of the street. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and in May of 2024, my husband David and I moved into what we thought was our dream home on Maple Ridge Drive. The house was perfect for bedrooms, a beautiful backyard, and a quiet suburban street where kids rode bikes and neighbors waved hello. Or so we thought. Our first week was blissful. We spent our days unpacking boxers, painting the nursery, and meeting the neighbors. Everyone seemed welcoming, though something felt off. Whenever we mentioned living next to the corner lot, people's smiles would fade, their eyes would dart away, and they'd quickly change the subject. "You'll meet everyone soon enough. One neighbor named Tom said nervously, 'Just be careful about where you park.' I laughed it off, thinking he was joking. I had no idea what was coming. Karen Hendricks lived in the large colonial at the end of Maple Ridge Drive. Her house looked immaculate, perfectly manicured lawn, pristine white shutters, magazine-worthy flower beds. But that exterior hid something toxic. I first met Karen on our 8th day in the neighborhood. It was a Saturday morning, and my daughter Emma was outside drawing flowers and rainbows on our driveway with washable sidewalk chalk. She was laughing, completely absorbed in her art, when a sharp voice cut through the morning. "Excuse me! Excuse me!" A woman marched across the street toward us. She was tall, probably in her late 40s, with severely pulled-back hair and an expression that could curdle milk. She wore expensive athletic wear, designer sunglasses perched on her head, and carried herself with superiority that immediately put me on edge. "Can I help you?" I asked, stepping closer to Emma. "Your child is defacing public property," Karen snapped, pointing at Emma's drawings. "This is unacceptable. The HOA has strict rules about maintaining neighborhood aesthetics." I blinked in confusion. "She's drawing on our own driveway with washable chalk. It'll disappear with the next rain." Karen's face flushed red. "I don't care if it's washable. It looks trashy and brings down property values. I've lived here for 15 years, and we've never allowed this behavior. Clean it up immediately and keep your children under control." The audacity rendered me speechless. Emma had stopped drawing, looking up with worried eyes. Before I could respond, Karen pulled out her phone. "If you won't be reasonable, I'll call the police about this vandalism." "Vandalism? This is sidewalk chalk on my own property. I have every right." Karen's voice rose to a shriek. "I am a respected member of this community, and I will not watch this neighborhood deteriorate because people like you don't understand standards." She actually called the police. Right there, in front of my terrified Karen dialed 911 and reported vandalism and destruction of property. 2 officers arrived 20 minutes later, clearly annoyed. After I explained the situation, they apologized and left, but the damage was done. Emma was in tears, and I was shaking with rage. "Welcome to the neighborhood," I muttered, watching Karen storm back with a satisfied smirk. That was just the beginning. Over the next 2 weeks, Karen became our nightmare. She complained our car was parked 3 inches over an invisible property line. She called the city about our trash cans being visible 30 minutes before pickup. She reported our dogs barking. We didn't have a dog. But it wasn't just us. As I talked to neighbors, a horrifying picture emerged. Tom told me Karen had reported his teenage son's car for being an eyesore because it was 10 years old. The Johnsons had received a citation because their garden gnome violated aesthetic standards. The elderly couple next to Karen had been harassed so severely about their lawn that they'd spent $3,000 on landscaping they couldn't afford. "She's been doing this for years," Tom confided in a hushed voice. "People have tried to fight back, but she makes their lives miserable. She knows every loophole. She has time and money to make endless complaints. Why doesn't someone stop her?" Tom looked uncomfortable. "Some tried. The Martinez family sued her 3 years ago, cost them $25,000 in legal fees, and they still lost. They moved away 6 months later." "What about the HOA president?" Barbara Henderson is a good person, tries to keep peace. But Karen has never technically broken HOA rules. She uses them as weapons, but never violates them herself. Barbara's hands are tied. I felt sick. We'd moved into a neighborhood ruled by a tyrant. The situation escalated in early June. Our son Marcus, who was 9, loved riding his bike with friends. One evening around 6 o'clock, he left his bike on our front lawn while coming inside for dinner. The next morning, it was gone. Marcus was devastated. We filed a police report and asked neighbors if they'd seen anything. The Johnsons told us they'd seen Karen dragging a bike down the street the previous evening around 7:30. David and I drove to the storage facility 2 blocks over. After showing the manager our police report, he checked security footage. There was Karen, clear as day, wheeling our son's bike into her storage unit. We got the bike back. Police issued Karen a warning about theft. But she wasn't charged because she claimed it was an honest mistake. She thought it was abandoned property. The officer handling the case pulled me aside. "Ma'am, I've been called here 47 times in 3 years. 39 were complaints by Karen Hendricks. Most were frivolous. The other 8 were complaints about Karen. Off the record, that woman is a menace. Then why doesn't someone do something?" He sighed. "She never crosses the line far enough. She's smart. She knows how far to push without consequences. And she has money for lawyers." The breaking point came 3 weeks after moving in. David parked his truck on the street overnight after unloading lumber. It was completely legal. At 6 in the morning, we woke to a tow truck's beeping. David's truck was being loaded onto the flatbed. "What's happening?" David rushed out in pajamas. The driver looked apologetic. "Got a call from the property owner saying this vehicle was abandoned and blocking their driveway. This is a public street, and I'm not blocking anyone." The work order showed Karen Hendricks had called, claiming she owned the parking spot. It was a complete lie. Her driveway was 3 houses down on the opposite side. It cost us $350 to get the truck out. Plus, David missed work. When we confronted Karen, she simply smiled and closed the door in our faces. That evening, there was a knock at our door. A woman in her mid-50s, with kind eyes, stood there. "Sarah Michelle, I'm Barbara Henderson, the HOA president. We need to talk." Barbara sat at our kitchen table with a briefcase containing a thick folder of documents. "I owe you an apology," Barbara began. "I should have warned you about Karen, but legally, I couldn't say anything affecting your purchase. Now that you're experiencing this, I want you to know you're not alone. It's time we did something." "What can be done?" "Everyone says she's untouchable." Barbara's expression hardened. "Karen has been terrorizing this neighborhood for 15 years. She's driven out 7 families, caused thousands in damages and legal fees. As HOA president, I've tried diplomacy, but Karen doesn't respond to that. She responds to power. The HOA can't stop her when she operates within rules," Barbara continued. "But I've been documenting everything for years. Every complaint, every incident. I think it's time to push back, but I need people willing to stand up, document everything, and be witnesses." I looked at David. He squeezed my hand. "What do you need?" Barbara pulled out papers. "First, file formal complaints for every incident. The chalk, the bike, the towing. All documented. Second, keep a log, dates, times, incidents, witnesses. And third, be prepared for things to get worse before they get better. When Karen realizes we're fighting back, she escalates. Are you willing to stand your ground?" I thought about Emma's tears, about Marcus's devastated face, about every family driven out. "We're in," I said firmly. David nodded. "Whatever it takes." Barbara smiled. "Good. Because you won't fight alone. There are others waiting for the right moment. Together, we're going to show Karen this is our neighborhood." As Barbara prepared to leave, loud banging erupted at our front door. "Open up!" Karen's voice screamed. "I know that HOA which is in there." "Barbara, you think you can conspire against me?" "In my neighborhood." Barbara walked calmly to the door and opened it. Karen stood on our porch, face red with rage, pointing at Barbara. "You have no power here. None. I've lived here longer than you've been president. I know every person, every rule, every loophole. You can't touch me." Barbara stood tall. "This isn't your neighborhood, Karen. It belongs to all of us." "We'll see about that," Karen shrieked. "I'm calling an emergency HOA meeting. I'm having you removed as president. I'll make sure everyone knows you're abusing your position." She gestured at us. "You people don't belong here. This neighborhood has standards, and I maintain them." "What rules have we broken?" I demanded. Karen's eyes glittered with malice. "Where should I start? Trash cans visible outside designated hours? Violation. Vehicle parked in unapproved location. Violation. Children creating disturbances. Violation. I have photographs, timestamps, documentation of everything. When I present this to the board, Barbara will be finished." Barbara didn't flinch. "Call your meeting. Karen, present your evidence." "Because I'll be presenting mine too." "Your evidence?" Karen laughed harshly. "I've done nothing wrong. I'm a model citizen. I keep this neighborhood respectable. Without me, this place would fall apart. Is that what you think?" Barbara asked quietly. "That terrorizing families, stealing children's toys, filing false police reports is keeping this respectable? I do what's necessary. Someone has to maintain order. That's not order. Karen, that's tyranny. And it ends now." Karen's face contorted with rage. "You can't stop me. Nobody can. I've been doing this 15 years. The Martinez family tried. Gone. The Thompsons tried. Gone. Everyone who stood against me regretted it. Maybe we'll be different," I said. "Because this time, it's not one family. It's all of us." Karen turned her venomous gaze on me. "All of you. You think anyone here has spine to stand against me? They're cowards. When it's time to act, they'll scatter. I've seen it before." She stepped closer, voice dropping to a hiss. "You have no idea who you're dealing with. I have friends at City Hall, connections with every regulatory agency, lawyers on retainer who will bury you in paperwork until you're bankrupt. I have time, resources, and the rules on my side. Then you should know." Barbara said calmly, "There's also a rule about harassment and intimidation. Section 7, Paragraph 3 of the HOA bylaws." Karen's expression flickered. "You wouldn't dare. You don't have grounds?" "Don't I?" Barbara pulled out a folder. "I have 132 documented complaints against you from 47 residents over 15 years. Police reports showing 39 false calls. Witness statements, video evidence, documentation of theft, false accusations." For the first time, I saw uncertainty flash across Karen's face. But it was quickly replaced by arrogance. "Good luck proving wrongdoing. I've never been charged, never cited. You have nothing but whining." "Well, let the full board decide," Barbara said. "Your emergency meeting is granted. 1 week from today, 7:00 p.m., Community Center." Karen sneered. "You'll regret this. When I'm done, you'll wish you'd never moved here." She pointed at us. "You have no idea what's coming." She stormed off, but spun back around. "Oh, and Sarah, I wouldn't let your children play outside unsupervised anymore. You never know what dangerous situations they might find. This neighborhood can be very unpredictable for people who don't know how to behave." The threat made my blood run cold. David stepped forward angrily, but Barbara restrained him. "That's enough, Karen. Threatening children crosses a line." Karen smiled sweetly. "Threatening? I would never. I'm simply expressing concern for children's safety. As a concerned citizen, it's my duty to watch for hazards. You never know what might happen when children run wild without supervision." "Get off my property," I said through clenched teeth. "Now." Karen's smile widened. "Of course, I'm sure we'll be seeing much more of each other. Neighbors should be close, don't you think? She walked away, laughing. Barbara turned to us, expression grave. What she just did, that implicit threat, that's new. She's never gone that far before. She's escalating, which means she's worried. Worried people are dangerous. Should we call the police? David asked. And tell them what? She didn't explicitly threaten anyone. She's too smart. But be careful. Keep doors locked, security cameras on, children close. Document everything. Don't engage with her alone. After Barbara left, David and I sat in stunned silence. Through the window, I could see Karen's house down the street, all lit up. It looked peaceful, beautiful even, but now I knew it lived inside that facade. What have we gotten into? David asked quietly. I thought about Emma's chalk drawings, Marcus's bike, every driven-out family. I thought about Barbara's folder of evidence. And I thought about Karen's face when Barbara mentioned that harassment rule. We've gotten into a fight, I said, and we're going to win. But watching shadows move behind Karen's curtains, I couldn't shake the feeling things would get much worse before they got better. The war for Maple Ridge Drive had officially begun, and Karen had just fired the first real shot. The question was, how far would she go, and how far would we have to go to stop her? One thing was certain, our quiet suburban dream had turned into a nightmare. But unlike families before us, we weren't going to run. We were going to stand and fight, because Barbara was right. This wasn't Karen's neighborhood. It belonged to all of us. And it was time she learned that. Have you ever dealt with a neighborhood bully who made your life miserable? Share your stories in the comments below, and let us know how you fought back. After Karen's threatening outburst on our porch, sleep didn't come easily that night. Every sound outside made me jump. David installed additional security cameras at 2 in the morning. But the next morning brought a surprise. At 8 o'clock, our doorbell rang. Standing on our porch were Tom from down the street and Mrs. Chun from 2 houses over. Sarah, we heard what happened last night. Karen was screaming loud enough that half the street heard. We wanted to talk to you and David. Within 30 minutes, our living room filled with 7 neighbors. Tom and his wife, Jessica, Mr. and Mrs. Chun, the Johnsons, and Marcus and Rita Thompson, who lived across from Karen. We're tired of being afraid, Marcus said, his voice shaking. Karen has made our lives hell for 2 years. She calls police every time we have guests after 7 p.m. She's reported our landscaping 11 times. She tried to get our dog taken away when he's a 12-year-old golden retriever who can barely walk. Rita pulled out her phone. I've been documenting everything. I have 43 videos of Karen harassing us. Mrs. Chun spoke softly but firmly. We're 72 years old. We've owned our home 30 years. For 15 years, Karen has tormented us. Last winter, she called Adult Protective Services, claiming we were neglected. They found nothing, but the humiliation was devastating. One by one, neighbors shared stories. Karen targeted anyone she perceived as weak. New families, elderly residents, people who worked long hours. Barbara Henderson called me last night, Tom said. She's been HOA president 8 years and has never seen Karen this agitated. Barbara thinks Karen is scared because someone is finally standing up with evidence. Jessica nodded. Barbara wants to organize. She's calling it Operation Maple Ridge. She wants us to compile every piece of evidence. There's more, Tom continued. Barbara did some digging. Karen doesn't own her house. She's been renting 15 years from Robert Matthews in Florida. Barbara contacted him yesterday. Mr. Matthews had no idea, Tom explained. When Barbara told him everything and offered documentation, he was furious. Karen's lease has clauses about not harassing neighbors. I felt hope. So he could evict her. He's reviewing evidence. If it's as bad as we know, he has grounds for eviction. Mrs. Johnson raised her hand. Karen had a husband. Richard Hendricks. They divorced 7 years ago. He might talk about what she's really like. The meeting continued 2 hours. We created a shared digital folder. By noon, it contained over 300 files spanning 15 years. Barbara arrived at 1 o'clock with official HOA complaint forms. "The emergency meeting is in 6 days," Barbara explained, spreading documents across our table. "Karen thinks she embarrassed me and have me removed. What she doesn't know is I've spent 8 years documenting everything." "Here's what we have," Barbara continued. 132 formal complaints against Karen from 47 residents, 39 police calls she initiated, all deemed frivolous, 8 police calls about her, video evidence of theft, harassment, trespassing. "What happens at the meeting?" I asked. Barbara smiled grimly. "Karen will present her case against you and try to have me removed for bias. She'll have photographs of your trash cans and chalk drawings. She thinks the board will side with her. But HOA bylaws allow residents to present concerns," Barbara explained. Section 7, Paragraph 3 addresses conduct unbecoming of a community member. Harassment and intimidation can face sanctions, including fines or legal action. Tom whispered, "You're using her rulebook against her." "Exactly," Barbara said. "Karen loves rules. She lives by them. She weaponizes them. But she never thought they might apply to her over 5 days. Our neighborhood transformed. People who'd been isolated started talking to each other. The shared folder grew to over 500 files. Barbara tracked down 3 families who'd moved away. All agreed to provide statements. The Martinez family, who sued Karen unsuccessfully, sent 17 pages of documentation. Richard Hendricks called Barbara on day 3. Living with her was like living with a tyrant, he told us on speakerphone. Everything had to be perfect. Our children stopped visiting because she was so controlling. The final straw was when she called police on our daughter's boyfriend for parking in our driveway. "I divorced her 7 years ago. But Karen wasn't idle. On day 2, we received certified letters. Karen filed complaints with the city. Grass height, violation. False. Fence alignment. False. Each required us to respond with evidence. The Thompsons received a letter from Karen's attorney threatening legal action for defamation. Mrs. Chun received a code enforcement visit about structural concerns. The inspector found nothing wrong and noted this was the 8th time in 4 years. "She's panicking," Barbara said. "She's throwing everything, hoping something sticks. This shows retaliatory behavior." On day 4, a news van appeared. Reporter Jennifer Martinez had heard about this situation. "I've been investigating HOA abuse stories," Jennifer explained. "Your situation needs exposure. Would you be willing to talk on camera?" David and I exchanged glances. We need to discuss this with Barbara and the neighbors first. That evening, 12 families gathered. Jennifer presented her proposal. "What I'd like is a story on HOA harassment and how communities fight back. I think exposing this kind of behavior helps other neighborhoods. Plus, public scrutiny might make Karen think twice." The vote was unanimous. 15 people agreed to go on camera. Jennifer spent day 5 interviewing residents and reviewing documentation. "In 20 years of journalism, this is one of the most extreme cases. The evidence you've compiled is incredibly thorough." Karen called police 3 times that day, claiming the news crew was trespassing. Each time, the officer informed her filming from public streets was legal. That evening, Karen went door to door, demanding to know who called the news. Most closed doors in her face. The Thompsons filmed her ranting. Day 6 arrived. The meeting was at 7 p.m. By 5, the parking lot was filling. Barbara sent notice to all 168 households. Usually meetings attracted 20 people. Tonight, over 90 residents showed up. Karen arrived at 6:55 in an expensive suit, carrying a briefcase and poster boards. She looked confident, gleeful. At 7, Barbara called the meeting to order. "Senora Hendricks will have 30 minutes to present. Following that, any resident may speak. The board will then deliberate." Karen presented for 28 minutes. Photographs of Emma's chalk, printouts of trash cans, visible at 6:45 a.m. Pictures of David's truck, images of toys in our yard. She spoke eloquently about standards and property values. She painted herself as a guardian maintaining excellence. These people moved in and immediately began treating it like their playground, she said, gesturing at us. When I tried to address issues, they conspired with our president to silence me. I moved that President Henderson be removed and the Mitchell family be fined. Barbara stood. Thank you. We will now hear from other residents. I have 17 people who requested time. Karen's expression faltered. 17. Tom stood first. For 10 minutes, he detailed every complaint Karen filed against his family. The false reports, the time she had his son's car towed, costing $425. This isn't about standards, Tom concluded. This is about one person using rules as weapons. The Mitchell family isn't the problem. Karen Hendricks is. One by one, residents stood. Mrs. Chun described years of harassment. Marcus Thompson played videos of Karen screaming. The Johnsons presented 18 months of false complaints. Barbara entered each piece into the official record. The pile grew higher. At 9:15 p.m., Barbara stood. Before we deliberate, I need to enter additional documentation. She picked up her thick folder. This contains 132 formal complaints against Mrs. Hendricks, filed over 15 years by residents. Karen shot up. That's a violation of my privacy. These are official HOA records, Barbara said firmly. Please sit down. You had your uninterrupted time. Now it's ours, Barbara continued. I have statements from 3 families who moved away, citing harassment as their reason. Additionally, I have a statement from Richard Hendricks describing a pattern of controlling behavior. That's defamation. Karen shouted. I'm presenting a statement from someone who lived with you 18 years and can speak to behavior patterns relevant here, Barbara responded. She addressed the room. I've been in contact with Robert Matthews, who owns the property Mrs. Hendricks rents. He was unaware and requested all documentation. As her lease contains neighbor relations clauses, Karen's face went pale. The meeting continued until 9. Video after video, document after document. 15 years of systematic harassment laid bare. Barbara finally stood. Before we deliberate, I want to address Mrs. Hendricks' motion. You came here believing you could use rules to drive out another family. You thought you could intimidate me, but you made a mistake. You pushed too far. Barbara held up the complaint folder. This isn't bias. This is accountability. The board deliberated 45 minutes. When they returned, Barbara's face was serious. First, regarding the motion to remove me as president, denied by unanimous vote. Second, regarding fines against the Mitchell family, all rejected. Mrs. Hendricks' complaints lack merit and appear filed in bad faith. Barbara paused. Third, the board unanimously voted to file formal sanctions against Mrs. Karen Hendricks under Section 7, Paragraph 3, citing harassment, intimidation, and conduct unbecoming of a community member. The room erupted. Karen jumped up. You can't do this. We can, and we have, Barbara said firmly. Senora Hendricks, you are fined $5,000 for violations. You are prohibited from filing complaints unless reviewed by the full board. Further harassment will result in additional fines and legal action. This is illegal. I'll sue. You're welcome to pursue legal action. But these sanctions are within our rights and supported by extensive documentation. Additionally, Mr. Matthews has been informed and is reviewing your lease compliance. Karen grabbed her materials and stormed toward the exit. At the door, she turned back. You all deserve each other. This neighborhood will fall apart without me. You'll regret this. The door slammed. Then someone started clapping. Within seconds, the entire room was applauding, many in tears hugging each other. Barbara called for order. "Mrs. Hendricks will have 30 days to pay the fine. She may attempt legal action. She will almost certainly escalate. Everyone needs to remain vigilant, continue and avoid engaging directly." As the meeting broke up, neighbors lingered, talking excitedly, making plans for block parties they'd been too afraid to hold. David and I walked home. For the first time since moving in, Maple Ridge Drive felt like the neighborhood we'd imagined. But as we passed Karen's house, I saw her silhouette in the window, backlit and motionless, watching the street. David squeezed my hand. "She can't hurt us anymore. We have Barbara. We have the neighborhood." I wanted to believe him. The battle had been won. But looking at that dark silhouette, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread. The battle had been won, but the war wasn't over yet. What do you think will happen next? Will Karen accept defeat or escalate further? Drop your predictions in the comments. The morning after the emergency HOA meeting, I woke up expecting to feel relief. We'd won. The board had sided with us. Karen had been sanctioned and fined. But instead of relief, I felt a cold knot of dread in my stomach. "Something's wrong," I told David over breakfast. "Karen's too quiet." He looked out the window toward her house. The curtains were drawn tight. No lights visible, no movement. "Maybe she's packing. Maybe she's actually going to pay the fine and leave quietly." "Karen doesn't do anything quietly," I said. I was right to worry. At 10:30 that morning, a process server knocked on our door. Then another at 11:15. By noon, we'd been served with 3 separate lawsuits. Karen wasn't accepting defeat. She was escalating to nuclear war. The first lawsuit was against David and me personally, claiming we'd conspired to defame her and destroy her reputation. $500,000 in damages. The second was against Barbara Henderson, accusing her of abuse of power and discrimination. $1 million. The third was a class action attempt against the entire HOA board, claiming they'd violated her civil rights. "She can't do this," David said, staring at the legal documents in disbelief. "Can she?" Barbara called an emergency meeting at the community center that evening. 23 families showed up, many of them holding their own lawsuit papers. Karen had sued 16 different households, plus Barbara, plus the HOA itself. The total damages she was seeking, over $4 million. "This is what's called a slap suit," Barbara explained, her voice steady despite the obvious stress on her face. "Strategic lawsuit against public participation. It's designed to silence critics through the burden of defending a lawsuit. Even if she can't win, she can make us spend tens of thousands of dollars on legal fees." "But we have proof of everything," Tom protested. "We are the videos documents, witness statements, and we'll use all of it," Barbara assured him. "The HOA's attorney says these lawsuits are completely frivolous. We have strong grounds for immediate dismissal, and we can countersue for malicious prosecution. But it's going to take time, and it's going to be stressful." Mrs. Chun raised a shaking hand. "I'm 72 years old. I can't afford a lawyer. What am I supposed to do?" Barbara walked over and put a hand on Mrs. Chun's shoulder. "The HOA will cover legal representation for any resident being sued as a result of this situation. You won't have to pay anything. Our attorney will represent all of us collectively." The relief in the room was palpable, but it was short-lived. The next morning, Karen filed complaints with every regulatory agency she could find. She reported Barbara to the State Real Estate Licensing Board, claiming Barbara had engaged in unauthorized practice of law. She filed a complaint with the Fair Housing Commission, alleging discrimination. She contacted the IRS, claiming the HOA was misusing funds. She even filed a report with the FBI, claiming there was a conspiracy to violate her civil rights. "She's throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks," Barbara said during another emergency call that evening. "Every agency will have to investigate, even though the complaints are baseless. It's going to tie up everyone's time and create stress." But Karen wasn't done. On day 3, after the meeting, the harassment went physical. The Johnsons woke up to find all 4 of their car tires slashed. No witnesses, no security camera footage of the actual act, but we all knew who did it. Cost to replace the tires, $800. Tom's son found his car, keyed the next morning, wheat awards, liars scratched into the paint. Repair estimate, $2,000. Someone threw a brick through the Thompsons' front window at 2 in the morning. Marcus's security cameras showed a figure in dark clothes and a hood, but the footage wasn't clear enough to definitively identify Karen. Still, we all knew. "We need to call the police," Rita said at yet another emergency meeting. "This is vandalism. This is destruction of property." "We've called them 4 times, Marcus said wearily. "They take reports, they investigate, but without clear evidence tying Karen to these acts, they can't arrest her. She's being careful not to be caught on camera." Barbara looked exhausted but determined. "We need to increase our security measures. More cameras, better lighting, neighborhood watch patrols, document everything, even the smallest incident." The psychological toll was enormous. People were afraid to leave their houses. Children were kept inside after dark. The Chuns installed bars on their windows. Tom bought a security system. Every strange sound at night made people jump. On day 5, things escalated further. Karen started following people. Mrs. Johnson went grocery shopping and noticed Karen's car 3 vehicles behind her the entire way. When she stopped at the store, Karen parked nearby and filmed her walking in. When Mrs. Johnson tried to confront her, Karen smiled sweetly and said, "I'm allowed to shop at the same store. It's a free country." Jessica reported Karen following her to her son's school, parking across the street, filming children as they came out. When the school called the police, Karen claimed she was simply sitting in a public parking lot and was within her rights. "She's trying to make us paranoid," David said. "She wants us to feel watched all the time. She wants us to give up." "It's working," I admitted. "I'm exhausted. I'm constantly looking over my shoulder. I'm afraid to let Emma play outside." "Is this worth it?" David put his arms around me. "Yes, because if we give up, she wins. And then she'll do this to someone else, and the cycle continues forever." On day 7, Barbara called with news. The HOA attorney filed motions to dismiss all of Karen's lawsuits. He's arguing that they're frivolous, filed in bad faith, and constitute harassment. The judge scheduled a hearing for next week. "What are the chances the judge will dismiss them?" Tom asked. Barbara said, "But judges are unpredictable. We need to be prepared for this to drag out." That night, someone poisoned the Thompsons' garden. All their vegetables died overnight. Someone dumped motor oil on the Chun's lawn, killing a large section of grass. Someone spray-painted obscenities on the street in front of Tom's house. The police increased patrols, but they couldn't be everywhere at once. And Karen was clever. She was never caught in the act. She maintained plausible deniability for everything. On day 9, the psychological warfare reached a new level. Karen hired a private investigator to dig into everyone's backgrounds. Suddenly, neighbors started receiving anonymous letters highlighting embarrassing or private information. Tom's DUI from 15 years ago was sent to all his neighbors. Mrs. Chun's bankruptcy from a decade earlier was anonymously posted in the neighborhood Facebook group. Someone sent Marcus's employer false reports claiming he was stealing from the company. "This is insane," Jessica said, tears streaming down her face. "How do we fight someone with unlimited time and money who's completely obsessed with destroying us?" "We stay together," Barbara said firmly. "That's how. She wants to divide us. She wants to make us turn on each other. We don't give her that satisfaction." But the strain was showing. At a neighborhood meeting on day 10, arguments broke out. Some people wanted to settle with Karen, pay her something to make her go away. Others wanted to fight to the bitter end. The unity we'd felt after the HOA meeting was fracturing under the pressure. "Listen to me," Barbara said, raising her voice over the arguments. "This is exactly what she wants. She wants us fighting with each other instead of standing against her. Every time we turn on each other, she wins." "Easy for you to say," someone shouted. "You're not the one whose business is being destroyed by false reviews online. You're not the one getting death threats." Death threats? I asked, shocked. Several people nodded. Anonymous emails and letters threatening violence if they didn't drop the case against Karen. Barbara pulled out her phone. I've gotten 23 death threats, all anonymous, all untraceable, all carefully worded to avoid being explicitly illegal. I've reported every single one to the police, and I'm still here, and I'm still fighting, because someone has to. The room went quiet. I understand you're all scared, Barbara continued. I'm scared too, but here's what I know. Bullies count on fear. They count on isolation. They count on people getting tired and giving up. If we give up now, after everything we've been through, we're teaching our children that bullies win, that doing the right thing isn't worth the cost. I refuse to teach that lesson. Slowly, one by one, people nodded. The unity wasn't broken. It was strained, bent, but not broken. On day 12, we finally got some good news. The judge granted the motion to dismiss 4 of Karen's lawsuits with prejudice, meaning she couldn't refile them. Escalates, deemed frivolous and vexatious, and warned that if Karen continued filing baseless lawsuits, she'd face sanctions. Karen's response was to file 6 more lawsuits the next day. She doesn't care about sanctions, the HOA attorney explained. She has money and time. She's willing to pay fines if it means continuing to harass you. On day 14, the local news ran a follow-up story. Jennifer Martinez interviewed several neighbors about the ongoing harassment campaign. The story showed the slashed tires, the broken windows, the spray-painted street. It showed Karen following people and filming them. Public opinion turned decisively against her. But public opinion doesn't stop vandalism or lawsuits or fear. On day 15, something shifted. Robert Matthews, Karen's landlord, called Barbara with urgent news. I've been documenting everything, he said. Every lawsuit, every complaint, every incident. My attorney says I have grounds to evict her immediately based on lease violations. She's creating a nuisance. She's damaging property values, and she's creating potential legal liability for me as the property owner. How fast can you do it? Barbara asked. I'm filing for eviction tomorrow. With everything documented, my attorney thinks we can have her out in 30 days, maybe less if she doesn't contest it. For the first time in 2 weeks, hope flickered. But you need to know, Mr. Matthews continued, she's going to get worse before she gets better. Once she's served with eviction papers, she knows she's really losing. That's when she'll be most dangerous. He was right. When Karen was served with eviction papers on day 16, her response was volcanic. She stood in her front yard and screamed for an hour straight, shouting obscenities at anyone who passed by. She drove up and down the street at 3 a.m. with her horn blaring. She called in false emergency calls, claiming there were fires and medical emergencies at various houses, sending police and ambulances racing to our street multiple times. After the 3rd false emergency call, the police arrested her for misuse of emergency services. She spent 6 hours in jail before her attorney posted bail. The arrest seemed to trigger something in Karen. For the next 3 days, she was eerily quiet. Too quiet. Her house was dark. Her car didn't move. People started wondering if she'd left. Then on day 20, Jennifer Martinez called Barbara with alarming news. Karen contacted me. Jennifer sighed. She wants to do an interview. She claims she's the victim of a conspiracy. She says the entire neighborhood has been harassing her for years, and she's just been defending herself. Are you going to interview her? Barbara asked. I am, Jennifer said, but I'm going to do it right. I'm going to fact-check every claim. I'm going to show her the documents, the videos, the evidence. I want to give her the chance to explain herself on camera. The interview aired 2 days later. It was devastating for Karen. Jennifer played video of Karen screaming at neighbors. She showed the documented complaints going back 15 years. She presented evidence of the tire slashing, the vandalism, the following and filming. When Karen tried to claim she was the victim, Jennifer calmly presented evidence contradicting each claim. Karen became increasingly agitated. eventually storming out of the interview, yelling that the media was part of the conspiracy. The interview went viral. Millions of views. Karen became a national symbol of HOA abuse and neighborhood harassment. People created memes. Legal analysts discussed her behavior on talk shows. Even comedians made jokes about HOA Karens. The publicity had an unexpected effect. Karen went completely silent. For 3 days, nothing. No lawsuits, no vandalism, no harassment. Her house remained dark and quiet. "Is it over?" David asked. On day 2. I don't know, I said. "But I have a feeling we're about to find out." The next morning, Barbara called with news that made my blood run cold. "Karen's attorney just filed an emergency motion," Barbara said. "She's claiming mental health crises. She's asking the court for a temporary restraining order against the entire neighborhood, claiming we're causing her severe emotional distress. After everything she's done." I couldn't believe it. "She's claiming we're harassing her. She's desperate," Barbara said. "The eviction is proceeding. Her lawsuits are being dismissed. The public thinks she's a monster. She's trying anything to save herself." The emergency hearing was scheduled for the next day. 20 neighbors attended, sitting in the courtroom gallery. Karen sat at the plaintiff's table with her attorney, looking pale and drawn. The judge reviewed the filings, then looked at Karen. "Mrs. Hendricks, you've filed dozens of lawsuits, numerous complaints with various agencies, and according to police reports, you've engaged in what appears to be a systematic harassment campaign. And now you're claiming the neighborhood is harassing you?" "They are," Karen insisted. "They've conspired to destroy my reputation. They've turned everyone against me." "They've, Mrs. Hendricks," the judge interrupted. "I've reviewed the evidence submitted by both sides. The restraining order is denied. Furthermore, I'm issuing an order that you may not file any additional lawsuits related to this matter without prior court approval. If you violate this order, you will face contempt charges. Do you understand?" Karen stood up, her face red with rage. "This is a travesty. This is corruption. You're all conspiring, Señora Hendricks. Sit down now, or I will hold you in contempt," the judge warned. She sat, but the fury radiating from her was palpable. As we filed out of the courtroom, Karen stood in the hallway, staring at us with an expression I'll never forget. Pure hatred mixed with something else. Defeat. She knew she'd lost. That evening, as darkness fell over Maple Ridge Drive, I stood at our front window looking toward Karen's house. The curtains were still drawn. But I knew she was in there, and I knew this wasn't over. Not yet. The storm was still building, and something told me the worst was yet to come. The tension is building. What do you think Karen will do next? Share your predictions in the comments. The week following the emergency HOA meeting was eerily quiet. Karen didn't come out of her house. Her car sat motionless in the driveway. The curtains remained drawn. It was like living next to a ghost house, and somehow that silence felt more ominous than her usual aggressive behavior. "Maybe she actually accepted defeat," David said hopefully on day 3. "Maybe the reality of the fine and potential eviction finally got through to her." I wanted to believe him. But every time I looked at her dark house at the end of the street, I felt a knot of anxiety in my stomach. This wasn't over. I knew it in my bones. Barbara called a neighborhood meeting on day 5. 20 families gathered in Tom and Jessica's backyard, sitting on lawn chairs and blankets, drinking lemonade in the warm evening air. For the first time in years, people felt safe enough to gather openly without fear of Karen calling the police or filing complaints. "I wanted to update everyone on the situation," Barbara began. "First, the good news. The HOA fine of $5,000 is officially on the books. Karen has 25 days remaining to pay it. If she doesn't, we can place a lien on the property." "What's Mr. Matthews saying?" Rita Thompson asked. "He's horrified," Barbara said. "He had no idea any of this was happening. He's consulting with his attorney about the lease violations. The lease has a specific clause about maintaining good neighbor relations and not engaging in behavior that could create legal liability. 15 years of documented harassment definitely qualifies. So he'll evict her? Marcus asked hopefully. He's building his case. Eviction isn't as simple as just kicking someone out. He needs to follow proper legal procedures, but he's highly motivated. What about the news story? Mrs. Chun asked. Jennifer Martinez's report is scheduled to air in 3 days, Barbara said. The story is titled, "When HOA Rules Become Weapons, One Communities Fight Back." Everyone cheered. But I need everyone to stay alert, Barbara warned. Karen has been quiet for 5 days. That's not like her. She's either broken and defeated, or she's planning something. As if summoned by Barbara's words, we heard a car door slam. Everyone turned to look down the street. Karen had emerged from her house for the first time in days. But she wasn't alone. A man in an expensive suit stood next to her Mercedes. Even from a distance, we could see he was carrying a briefcase. That must be her attorney, Tom muttered. Here we go. The next morning, certified letters arrived at 16 different houses. Karen was suing the lawsuit named Barbara Henderson, the HOA board, and 14 individual residents, including David and me. She was seeking damages for defamation, conspiracy, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and violation of her civil rights. The amount, $2 million. This is insane, David said, staring at the legal documents. Winning isn't the point. Barbara explained at an emergency meeting that afternoon. The point is to intimidate us, drain our resources, make who's hype. It's called ASLAPP suit, Strategic Lawsuit Against Public Participation. It's designed to silence people through the burden and expense of legal defense. But we have evidence, I protested. We have documentation of everything she did. And we'll use it. The HOA's attorney is already on this. He says the lawsuit is frivolous, and we have strong grounds to get it dismissed quickly. But in the meantime, she's going to try to make our lives hell. Barbara was right. Over the next 3 days, Karen launched an all-out assault. She filed complaints with every city department she could think of. Code enforcement received dozens of reports about alleged violations on our street. The fire marshal got anonymous tips about fire hazards. The health department received complaints about pest problems. All false. All designed to harass. She also ramped up her surveillance. She sat in her car for hours at a time, parked on the street, openly filming everyone who came and went. When people confronted her, she smiled sweetly and said she was documenting evidence for her lawsuit. The Thompsons' dog got out of their yard one afternoon. Someone had deliberately unlatched their gate, and Karen immediately called animal control, claiming the dog had attacked her. Fortunately, Marcus had security footage showing Karen had actually opened the gate herself, and the dog had simply wandered out, never going near her. On day 8, Jennifer Martinez's news story aired. David and I gathered with 15 other families at the Johnsons' house to watch it together. The report was everything we'd hoped for. Jennifer had done her homework. She showed the documents, played the videos, interviewed residents on camera, and painted a devastating picture of 15 years of systematic abuse. The piece also showed brief clips from the HOA meeting, including Karen's furious outburst and her threatening words as she left. The story ended with Jennifer standing in our neighborhood, saying, "Sometimes the only way to stop a bully is for an entire community to stand together and say enough." Here on Maple Ridge Drive, that's exactly what happened. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The news station's website crashed from traffic. The story was shared thousands of times on social media. Other people from different neighborhoods started commenting, sharing their own HOA horror stories. But Karen's response was even more extreme. The next morning, she filed a lawsuit against Jennifer Martinez and the news station for defamation. She also filed a complaint with the state attorney general's office claiming the HOA had violated open meeting laws. And she reported Barbara to the state licensing board. "She's losing it," Tom said. "When we gathered that evening, she's just attacking everyone and everything." "Cornered animals are the most dangerous," Barbara replied grimly. "She's desperate." The news story made her look terrible. The HOA sanctions are real. Her landlord is building an eviction case. She's facing the first real consequences of her behavior in 15 years, and she's fighting back with everything she's got. On day 10, Robert Matthews finally called Barbara with news. He'd reviewed everything and consulted with his attorney. He was filing for eviction based on lease violations. Karen would have 30 days' notice, after which she'd need to vacate the property or face forcible removal. When the eviction notice was served 2 days later, Karen's response was explosive. She screamed at the process server, refusing to accept the documents until the sheriff's deputy threatened to arrest her. Then she got in her car and drove up and down Maple Ridge Drive for over an hour, blasting her horn continuously, stopping in front of each house to scream obscenities. The police were called multiple times. When they finally arrived and told her to stop, she accused them of harassment and conspiracy. She was given a citation for disturbing the peace and warned that any further incidents would result in arrest. That night, Barbara called another emergency meeting. "I know everyone is exhausted and scared," she said, "but we're winning. Karen is unraveling. Every action she takes is just more evidence of exactly the kind of behavior that got her sanctioned in the first place. But what if she does something really crazy?" Mrs. Chun asked nervously. "What if she gets violent?" "We've already discussed this with the police," Barbara assured her. "They're aware of the situation. They've increased patrols on our street. If anyone feels threatened or sees anything concerning, call 911 immediately." On day 15, the HOA's attorney filed a motion to dismiss Karen's lawsuit. He argued that everything we'd said was true, documented, and protected speech. He also filed a motion for sanctions against Karen and her attorney for filing a frivolous lawsuit. Karen responded by showing up at the next regular HOA meeting with a video camera and a sign that read, "Corruption and Conspiracy." She sat in the front row, filming everything, muttering commentary about how the board was violating her rights. Barbara handled it with remarkable calm. "Senora Hendricks, you're welcome to observe this meeting as a resident. However, you're prohibited from filing complaints per the sanctions against you. If you disrupt this meeting, you'll be asked to leave. Do you understand?" Karen simply glared at her and kept filming. The meeting proceeded normally, though everyone was acutely aware of Karen's presence. When the meeting ended, she stood up and addressed the room. "You all think you've won?" she said, her voice shaking with emotion. "You think you can just drive me out and everything will be fine? But you're wrong. I built this neighborhood. I maintained the standards. Without me, you'll see what happens. Crime will increase. Property values will drop. This place will become a slum. And when that happens, don't say I didn't warn you." She stormed out, leaving behind an uncomfortable silence. "She really believes that," Jessica whispered. "She actually thinks she's been helping the neighborhood." "That's what makes her so dangerous," Barbara replied. "She's convinced herself she's the hero of this story on day 20. Karen's attorney filed a motion to withdraw from representing her. According to legal gossip, Karen had become impossible to work with, refusing to follow legal advice and insisting on filing additional frivolous claims. Without legal representation, Karen filed several more handwritten lawsuits on her own. They were rambling documents full of conspiracy theories. The court clerks accepted them, but everyone knew they'd be dismissed quickly. The 30-day eviction notice was approaching its deadline. Karen showed no signs of preparing to move. Her house remained occupied, her car in the driveway. Mr. Matthews called Barbara on day 20. "My attorney says if she doesn't vacate by the deadline, we can get a sheriff's lockout. But I'm worried about how she reacts. We're all on high alert," Barbara told him. The deadline came and went. Karen didn't leave. Mr. Matthews filed for the sheriff's lockout, scheduled for 3 days later at 9 a.m. The morning of the lockout, 20 neighbors gathered on the street, keeping a respectful distance. Teixeira's deputies arrived first, followed by a locksmith and Mr. Matthews' property manager. The lead deputy knocked on the door. "Senora Hendricks, this is the sheriff's office. You need to open the door. You're being evicted from this property. If you don't open the door, we will force entry." "Silence." He knocked again, louder. "Mrs. Hendricks, Open the door now." Still nothing. The deputy nodded to the locksmith, who began working on the lock. It took 5 minutes. The deputies entered first, calling out, "Sheriff's office." We all held our breath, wondering if Karen would explode in fury or do something desperate. But when the deputies emerged a minute later, they looked confused. "House is empty," one of them called out. "Looks like she cleared out yesterday or last night. Place is completely empty, except for trash. Empty." Karen was gone. The property manager did a quick walkthrough and returned, shaking his head. She left the place trashed. Holes punched in walls, kitchen cabinets ripped off, carpets stained. "It's going to cost thousands to repair." But she was gone. After 15 years of terrorizing the neighborhood, Karen Hendricks had finally left Maple Ridge Drive. The relief was overwhelming. Neighbors hugged each other. Some were crying. Mrs. Chun actually collapsed into a lawn chair. "It's finally over," she kept saying. "It's finally over." Barbara held up her hands. "Let's not celebrate too early. We don't know where she went. She could still be in the area. And we still have her lawsuits to deal with." But the lawsuits were dismissed one by one over the following weeks. Without an attorney and with overwhelming evidence against her, the judges had no patience for Karen's frivolous claims. The HOA's attorney also succeeded in getting sanctions against her. She was ordered to pay $15,000 to cover legal fees. We never saw Karen again. Someone said they heard she'd moved 3 towns over. Someone else claimed they saw her posting in a Facebook group for another neighborhood, complaining about property standards. But she was gone from Maple Ridge Drive. And that's all that mattered. 2 months later, Barbara organized the neighborhood block party we'd all dreamed of. Over 100 people showed up. Children played in the street without fear. Music played. People laughed and talked and shared stories. A young couple with a baby moved into Karen's old house after Mr. Matthews finished the repairs. They were friendly and kind, and they fit into the neighborhood immediately. Emma even taught their older daughter her chalk drawing techniques on the driveway. As the sun set on the block party, I stood with David, watching our neighbors laughing together in Tom's backyard. Barbara was showing the new couple around. The Thompsons' dog was playing with 3 other neighborhood dogs. Mrs. Chun was teaching some children how to play an old Chinese game. "We did it," David said, putting his arm around me. "We actually did it." "Barbara did it," I corrected. "She led us. She showed us that one person standing up can inspire everyone else to stand up too." "And, Karen?" David asked. "Do you think she learned anything?" I shook my head. People like Karen don't learn. They just find new victims somewhere else. But at least she's not our problem anymore. And at least everyone here learned that they don't have to accept being bullied," Barbara said, joining us. She raised her glass of lemonade. To standing together. To not backing down. To proving that neighborhoods belong to everyone, not just to the loudest, angriest person on the block. We clinked glasses, and as I looked around at all these people who'd found their voices and their courage, I felt something I hadn't felt since we'd moved here. Hope. Real, genuine hope for the future. Maple Ridge Drive wasn't perfect. We still had HOA rules and regulations, and the normal neighbor disputes that happen anywhere. But we'd learned something invaluable. When good people stand together, bullies lose their power. When communities unite, tyrants fall. And sometimes, all it takes is one person willing to say enough to change everything. As darkness fell and the party continued, I saw Mrs. Chun standing at the edge of the gathering, looking down the street toward the house that Karen used to occupy. The new family's porch light was on, warm and welcoming. Mrs. Chun turned back to the party with tears in her eyes and a smile on her face. For the first time in 15 years, Maple Ridge Drive felt like home. Have you ever had to stand up to a neighborhood bully? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might help others find the courage to fight back.